What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today we're going to be discussing why black and white street photography will change how you see the world. Now, I've been changing the way I see through the act of making black and white photographs over the past 3 years. And I gotta say, it's really transformed how I see everyday life. You know, when I'm out there in the world and I'm looking at life in front of me, I'm not necessarily trying to photograph what life is, but what life could be through the act of abstracting reality through the art of black and white photography. And so here are some of the photographs that I've made throughout my journey of traveling the world and photographing in color, just to give a foundation of where I'm coming from as a photographer and how I've previously seen the world through my lens. And so color has always been a choice for me based upon the simple fact that I was photographing using raw files and I never really considered adjusting them to black and white. I know that's a very basic way of approaching color photography, but genuinely the reason why I photographed in color throughout my journey is literally just due to the fact that my camera produced a color file. I mean, that's really the reason. And so now I switched to shooting strictly small JPEG files with high contrast black and white cranked to the max within my camera, and essentially what the camera sees is what I get, you know, you could say, in a way, where I'm basically not doing any adjustments, I'm doing no post-processing, and all of these photographs are made directly in my camera. And so I'm making the conscious decision to transition to black and white by making this process built into my camera. And so now that we set the stage here, looking at some of my photographs and my transition, I really want to dive into essentially how black and white is allowing me to strip down to the essence of the medium. When you look at photography, phos meaning light, graphe meaning writing or drawing, essentially by stripping down to light and shadow, black and white, I'm returning to the essence of the medium of drawing with light or writing with light. And I find that this is a very impactful way to reframe the way in which we look at photography. By returning to the essence, it transforms the way that I see the world. And so in this video, we're going to be diving into the philosophy, the process, and the emotional core of black and white photography and what this means to me. And so in the past, I would essentially photograph the external. You know, like I would look at life and I was documenting the world for what it was or what it is. But now I'm photographing the internal, right? So in the past, I wasn't really considering my personal perception of the world as much. Nowadays, I'm photographing in a way where that is what truly is at the forefront, where I'm trying to evoke a feeling in the photographs I make. I'm trying to evoke my soul in the photographs I make. And I'm not necessarily looking at the moments in front of me for what it is, but I'm trying to sort of abstract reality and interpret life through my own individual response to the world around me. My own interpretation of reality is what I hope to evoke in the photographs I make. And I think in the past, essentially, I was photographing facts. You know, this is a moment, this is a person doing this thing. Whereas now I'm trying to turn that on its head and allow my sort of subconscious mind drive the photographs I make, and not necessarily think with such a rational mind, but photograph strictly from the gut, hopefully evoking my internal state. And so the idea is soul photography, you know, by stripping down to black and white, by returning to light and shadow and focusing on the forms, the emotion, the sort of moment itself in its rawest and most unfiltered form, by embracing the high contrast grit and grain. I hope to showcase the sort of essence of the street. Returning to black and white, returning to monochrome allows me to focus on these simple ideas. It allows me to strip away the distractions and focus on what truly matters within my frames. And so the most powerful way I've been looking at the way in which I'm approaching black and white photography is the way in which it's allowing me to see beyond reality, right? So when I'm photographing and I'm shooting with the LCD screen on my Ricoh GR camera, I have the black and white baked into the camera. So I'm looking at life in black and white through my LCD screen. And if I hold the camera up to a particular scene, a lot of the times it feels like I'm seeing beyond the veil, you know, where color is showing the world as it is, but black and white reveals what the world means. It kind of strips down to the bare bones of life itself. It kind of shows you what's most important in the light and puts what's not important in the shadows and it crushes it. And so I find this to be a very interesting way to look at the way in which I'm interpreting reality through black and white photography. It's looking beyond the veil. It's this sort of seeing beyond reality that I find to be intriguing. By removing color, I'm seeing the patterns in nature and human behavior by studying the light or watching the gestures of people on the street much more intensely. I'm much more focused on the emotion that can be evoked in a photograph. I'm looking at the way that these emotions can form with geometry, and the way that they emerge in my photographs is not necessarily in the way in which I was documenting reality, but it's about abstracting it. And so my thought is, what you see isn't what you get. What you get is what you didn't see. And what that means, and what I think about when I say this is the simple fact that a lot of the times when you're photographing life, you're maybe caught up with trying to depict exactly what you saw in that moment, and you think that you can control all of the chaos in your frames. And while I do believe as a photographer our goal is to put order to the chaos in our frames, a lot of the time we surprise ourselves with the photos we make by allowing serendipity, allowing spontaneity to take over, and allow the sort of raw sort of nature of black and white photography to reveal some imperfection, to reveal something that your naked eye didn't see within the moment that you made the photo in reality. And I think this is a very powerful way to look at the way in which I use black and white photography to transform the way that I see the world. I'm allowing chance, I'm allowing spontaneity, I'm allowing imperfection, and the way in which black and white abstracts the reality to give me something new, to give me something fresh, to give me something surprising that I didn't necessarily see in the moment that I pressed the shutter. And so my simple workflow is using a Ricoh GR camera with the small JPEG high contrast black and white simulation baked into the camera with all of the contrast, all of the grain, everything cranked to the max. I use the snap focus at 2 meters with highlight weighted metering mode and a minimum shutter speed of 1/500th of a second using AV mode, shutter priority mode, keeping the aperture at f8 at all times. And essentially this allows me to get the camera or get the photos straight out of camera, no Lightroom needed. And essentially by adopting this workflow, I can import thousands of photos from the day at lightning speed. And this allows me to stay on top of my archive. This allows me to go out there, produce more photos. And I essentially believe that quantity is more important than quality right now, in my process, because the more that you put the hammer to the grindstone, the more that you go out there and produce more photos, the more you're going to find the quality that you're looking for. And it really does require you to put in the time to go out there with repetition and consistency. And then through that discipline of practicing your photography each and every day, and by adopting this simplified and streamlined workflow, I've been able to produce so many more photos than I've ever been able to produce in my entire life. And so if this workflow sounds interesting to you, I highly encourage you to visit my website at dantesisofo.com. You can check out my workflow and exactly how I set my camera up to achieve these goals. And so with black and white photography, it's transforming the way that I see reality. It's transforming the way that I photograph and how I make a composition. Where nowadays I'm simplifying my compositions, returning to the form, returning to the moment, returning to the gesture, the emotion at the scene, and really simplifying things. And so I find that the simplification process of removing color, removing distractions, is allowing me to hone in on the moment that truly matters in my frames, separating the subjects from the background in a very clean way that allows the expression on the face to be revealed in the frame. And so cloudy days are a gift. One of the greatest things about black and white photography is that I'm no longer dependent on the particular time of day to go out and photograph. Whereas in the past, when I would shoot color and I was really emphasizing the light and the shadow play and looking for the striking colors and the compositions that I could make, it was something that was limiting me based upon the fact that I would only want to ever go out on those particular days, to be honest with you. Like in times where I was traveling, a lot of the times the best time to go out and take pictures was around the golden hour, and I would sometimes take a break in the middle of the day when I was shooting because you wouldn't really get something. And so, with black and white, however, cloudy days are a gift. The overcast skies act as nature's diffuser, giving me consistent light throughout the frame, and it allows me to photograph throughout the day despite the lighting condition, where sometimes with no harsh shadows or no golden hour, you get the freedom of using this overcast sky to allow the simple light that's sort of overcast to emphasize the gestures, to emphasize the moments without the superfluous need of light, without the superfluous need of shadows, where you can simplify your life by returning to black and white and no longer being dependent on sunny days or times where the light is perfect. And I find that with black and white, going out even on a rainy day, using reflections, using textures, these things can be emphasized in your frames by returning to black and white. Any condition becomes photographable. And I think that this is a really important thought, because I'm no longer on the hunt for my next best photo. I simply know that my next photo is my best photo. This is a life-affirming process for me by going out there and photographing endlessly, despite the external conditions, despite what the weather brings, despite what the light is like. I go out there and I make photographs anyway, because I find that this is the goal, to be in the perpetual flow state of making new pictures. And by returning to black and white, I'm giving myself this ability to achieve this goal. And I find that by removing the distractions of color, by removing all of the superfluous things that come with the process of shooting color, I'm allowing myself to reveal the essence of the street. And so photography is a stream of becoming. And what this means is that with black and white photography, it gives you endless potential to push yourself, to creatively explore the boundaries of photography. I think that essentially with black and white photography, it's not about mastery, it's about becoming, it's about evolution and change and transformation. And by transforming my process to shooting in black and white, it's giving me the permission to experiment more, where every day on the street feels like there's endless possibilities now that I'm shooting in black and white. I'm photographing so many different ways and different things that I haven't before. I'm making new pictures that are exciting me. I'm making things in a new way that is fresh and invigorating. And I find that by returning to black and white and emphasizing light and shadow play and looking at simple gestures and forms and returning to the essence of light itself as my subject in my photographs, it feels as though it's unlocked this like notion for me that you cannot make the same photograph twice. Like Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher, said, you cannot step in the same river twice. Similarly, you cannot make the same photograph twice. The way the light casts upon surfaces, people, places, and things will always be different and will never be the same. And by using black and white photography, this can become emphasized in your frames, where you can walk the same mundane lane every single day, but still find something new to say. Through the spirit of play, using black and white returns you to the childlike state, like you're a kid with a charcoal piece of paper and a pencil drawing scribbles on the page, and it allows you to sort of display that authentic expression, that instant sketch, that photograph that reveals hopefully your soul, through going out there and making pictures in this sort of way, by photographing and making pictures of the sort of things that make you curious, the things that you subjectively deem to be beautiful or interesting. And by photographing those things, you can hopefully reveal your soul in the frame. And I think this to me is what it's all about. By returning to black and white, it's like going back to the start to the drawing board, going back to day one, going back to the beginnings of the medium of photography, and then rebuilding from there. And I think that there's just endless potential when you give yourself this creative constraint. And so I'm not documenting reality, I'm abstracting it. And that to me is the liberation of black and white photography. It gives you the permission to tinker and to experiment more. And so I find that black and white is a good creative constraint, where creative constraints breeds more creativity. By removing color, by limiting yourself to a JPEG file with black and white baked into your camera, it's going to actually push you to be more creative. I think giving yourself limitations is actually a really good discipline with creative arts like photography, where sticking to one camera, sticking to one lens, removing color, and focusing on black and white, these simple protocols can give you the ability to become more creative through this constraint. And I believe this to be true, and has been influencing the way in which I photograph. It's allowing me to experiment and to push myself more. And so I find that black and white photography is freedom. I'm photographing in such a new way. I'm making pictures in different scenes. I'm making things that are very new to me that I find joy in. I'm essentially finding freedom in removing color, where I was always seeking perfection in the past, always seeking to make that next best photo. But now I'm out there and I'm simply embracing play more. I'm tinkering more. I'm treating my photos like sketches. I'm not necessarily treating them like these masterpieces. I'm out there experimenting and pushing myself each day. And I'm trying to push myself to make more photographs with quantity, more photographs with rigor, going out there and making more pictures, pressing the shutter more throughout the entirety of my day, despite the lighting conditions, despite what's out there in the world. I'm always making pictures in black and white these days, because even in the most seemingly mundane scenes, or the mundane, most boring places, or you're walking around the outskirts of the city, you can always find something to photograph. And I find that there's something beautiful about abstracting reality and what that does for you creatively. It really does transform the way that you see the world and what you start to photograph. And it really does help me. And hopefully by making this video, it can help you and inspire you to go out there and give it a try. So I encourage you to see beyond the surface, peer beyond the veil of reality and photograph what you feel, not just what you see. The goal for me going forward is to reflect my soul in the photographs I make on the streets. And so these are some of my thoughts about black and white photography and how it will transform the way you see the world. These are some of my ideas. These are some of my photographs in these slides. And I hope that you learned something today, or at least became inspired by something I said or something you've seen today. And so if you enjoyed watching this video, please feel free to visit dantesisofo.com, where you can find 3 free ebooks and a variety of blog posts about my street photography process. You can find the ultimate Ricoh GR street photography guide, where I break down the settings, technique, and the snapshot philosophy. You can find my contact sheets ebook, where you can see behind the scenes photographs, and the mastering, layering, and street photography guide. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it for today. I highly encourage you to give black and white photography a try. It's completely transformed the way I see the world, and it's making me a happier photographer, actually. I mean, by simplifying my workflow as well, like, I highly encourage you to, if you check out the Ricoh street photography guide, it'll show you my exact workflow of how I use this camera, how I set it up, and exactly how I go out there and do this thing. Because, I think there is no one way to do things. There are no shortcuts or guidelines that you must follow. Like, the beauty of street photography is that there are no rules. But in this guide, I give you a step-by-step process on how you can give yourself this creative constraint to hopefully elevate your game and hopefully help you find more joy in your photography. And to me, that's the goal. And so hopefully that comes across in my words or something I said, or in the photos. And so, yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.